Shrubs are often considered something you plant just to hide the house foundation, but they're much more than that.
That's really true. We like to plant them in such a way that they'll attain their full height and spread in their own glorious natural shape, the way we've done over here. I'm Barbara Damrosch.
And I'm Elliot Coleman. If you'll stay with us for the next half hour, we'll show you a whole world of shrubs that you can plant in your landscape.
Both here and at Boston's famous Arnold Arboretum.
On Gardening Naturally.
For shrubs to plant around our property. We look for various features that are beautiful at one time of the year or another. Like this Mohawk viburnum is blooming right now, and that is so fragrant, and we've sited it so that it'll waft right up into that kitchen window when it's open. Or this Japanese flowering quince here. I like this because of the coral red blossoms that are just starting to come out now.
But another important factor is to know something about how these shrubs are going to look when they're full grown. Fortunately, this viburnum, which is going to get taller than the window, we put to the side, so even though it grows up, it won't be in the way. And this quince, which will only get about halfway up this wall and fill in the space beautifully, means we'll never have to prune it.
That's right. When you go to a nursery, it's sometimes difficult to tell how big these things are going to get or how they're going to look. They're in tiny little pots, or they're only this big and bald in burlap form. So I recommend that you go to a local botanical garden and explore the wonderful world of shrubs.
Barbara recently took a trip to the Arnold Arboretum in Boston in order to see how many of the popular shrubs look when they're at their full-grown size.
Some of them were many years old, and you wouldn't believe what wonderful things I saw there. I'm at the Arnold Arboretum, right in the middle of Boston. And with me is David Giblin, who is one of the horticulturists on the staff. David, tell me a little bit about the Arboretum. It's a magnificent place.
Well, the Arboretum is a 265-acre botanical garden dedicated to cultivating trees, woody shrubs, and vines that are hardy in the North Temperate Zone. The collections hold about 15,000 plants and about 5,000 different kinds of plants. I often tell people it's the Smithsonian of the tree and shrub collection in this country.
It's very famous. I've always wanted to see it.
Oh, well, welcome. Thanks for coming and seeing us.
I'm here for a kind of specific purpose. I love to grow shrubs, and I always like to see ones that I'm familiar with or interested in their mature form, or at least older than I would buy them in a nursery.
Well, this is a great place to have come because some of the plantings here are 100 years old. So many of the things that you see are essentially at maturity.
Yeah.
So we can take a walk around and take a look at some of the things you wanted to come and see.
Yeah, and I also hope I'll find some that I didn't know about before.
Well, I'm sure we can find some of those as well.
Great, let's take a look.
Okay.
I'm always on the lookout for beautiful native plants that I can put in my garden, Dave.
Well, here's one of them, Barbara. This is Rhododendron paraclimenoides, or what most people refer to as the pinkster bloom.
Oh, yeah, that grows wild in the woods in New England, doesn't it?
It does. It comes this far north. And what I think is particularly striking about this plant are the two-tone flowers.
Yeah, this part is red, and then as the flowers open, they're really pale pink.
Right. And, you know, the color lasts for about 2 weeks. And they're relatively easy to grow. They'll tolerate a little bit of sun. They prefer the shade, and they'll tolerate, actually, a little bit of moisture.
So it's happy next to this pond. It's
exactly.
in the pond.
Exactly. It doesn't like its feet to be completely wet, but it will tolerate a little bit of moisture.
Now, this is just taller than me. How big will this ultimately get?
Ultimately, that's about it. Oftentimes, it'll spread out and become more broad, but I would say that ultimately it's about 8 to 10 feet.
Right.
That's a great plant.
It really is.
It'd be nice to see more of it.
Yes. It would look very pretty planted next to this here with the very dark red leaves.
Well, this is one of the hazelnuts. And I think what this shows, Barbara, is that not all plants put into the garden have to be put in for their flowers. Oftentimes, it's a good idea to put in plants for their foliage, such as this, the striking color of this purple.
Would this bear hazelnuts if I planted it?
It will, but, you know, I don't think, I'm not accustomed to eating them, and I think most people probably would give it a miss.
Yeah. So you plant it for its gorgeous foliage instead. That's a nice shrub or tree. What's the difference between a shrub or a tree?
Well, that's a good question. It's something I've ever really worked out myself.
I don't think anybody's ever worked it out.
I kind of think, you know, what's the difference between a lake and a pond? Exactly.
Just a question of size, but where do you draw the line?
Well, personally, I usually think of it as something single-stemmed and over 30 feet. I generally think of it as a tree, yeah. Right. Shrubs often are multi-stemmed and under 30 feet.
Usually well under 30 feet. Mm-hmm. Oh, here's a big, magnificent azalea.
Yeah, this is the pink shell azalea, Rhododendron vasei. And for us here in Boston, it's the first native azalea to bloom, usually around the 1st of May. This year it's been particularly cool, so the bloom has persisted here into the 3rd week.
Yeah. It's nice to see it with very few leaves. You really see the flowers.
Exactly, which for me is one of the real attractions of the native azaleas, is that they bloom, a number of them bloom before the leaves come out, and I think it accentuates the flower show.
And it's very large. That must be about 15 feet in the center.
Yeah, it gets taller than the picture bloom that we were just looking at, and like the picture bloom, it'll tolerate a little bit of wet, but it prefers moist, and as you can see, it'll tolerate half a day's full sun. But oftentimes people like to plant it in dappled shade.
Yeah. Now, does it grow wild around here?
It doesn't grow wild around here. It's native a bit further south, but it's completely hardy here.
Yeah.
And I think even up where you are in Maine, it probably
Yes,
would be
I'm going to try it, because sometimes even if you think maybe you're borderline, you can try a shrub, and if it's in a sheltered part of your yard, it may do just great.
Exactly. You know, no one has the final word on where a lot of these things are hardy.
Even the Arnold Arboretum.
Even the Arnold Arboretum.
Now, here's a plant that Elliot and I put in our garden last year, the black chokeberry.
Right.
Aronia melanocarpa.
Exactly.
And the one we have is maybe this tall. And it's wonderful to me to see how big this thing can actually get.
Right. Which, you know, as I was saying here at the Arnold, you know, you get to see some of these really mature specimens.
Now, how old is this one?
Well, let's take a look. As you know, as a botanical garden, it's essentially a tree museum, and so all the plants have records. And the label here says that this was planted in 1974. So this is essentially what you can expect, the ultimate size of this plant. So it's not the kind of thing that you would plant underneath the windows on the side of the house.
Right. I planted it in a grove just like this with several of them together. It looks very natural.
Exactly. You know what's nice about this is that you don't really have to do too much pruning.
Right.
It's nice to set it in a spot where it can grow into, and occasionally just cut out some of the larger stems.
Right, to keep it renewed.
It's a great plant.
It is, and it does so many different things. I like the flowers. And the berries are still here from last year, and they hang around for the birds all winter long.
They do, and you know, the birds do eat them.
Yeah.
And so it's a great plant, you know, and in fall time it has brilliant fall color.
Well, that's terrific. I'm glad we planted it then.
Good. Well, around here, there's some other wetland plants.
There's a blueberry.
Right, the high bush blueberry.
Perfect plant for next to a pond.
It is. In fact, that's where it grows. Here in Massachusetts, we have a lot of them, and they do grow in wet areas.
Not right in the water, but kind of sitting up on hummocks.
Exactly.
Right.
This is a nice size one, but there's another one a little further over that I'd like to show you, which I think is much more representative of how big they can get.
Okay, I'd like to see that.
Okay, let's go.
Oh, Dave, this is a real King Kong of a blueberry bush.
Isn't this a great one?
How old is this?
Well, it's I would say it's at least 60 years old.
Oh, wow.
A real mature specimen.
And what a beautiful round mound that makes.
It's a fantastic plant. You know, I personally think it's underplanted in the landscape.
People should use it more as a landscaping plant. They think of it as a fruit crop only.
Exactly. You know, the berries are beautiful, but it has so many more qualities than just edible fruit.
Look at these spring flowers.
And of course the blueberries.
And the birds like those too.
The birds love them. Often we're having to fight the birds for the fruit. And then, you know, in fall time comes this outstanding red foliage.
Beautiful foliage. And even in wintertime, you know, the twigs get that purple look. And against the snow, it's quite lovely.
It's wonderful. You know, and it almost assumes kind of a glow around the plant.
Yeah.
It's really fantastic.
I have to think about winter plants because I live up in Maine, it's winter most of the time, it seems. And the landscape has to be pretty then, too.
Exactly. Well, here in Boston, you know, essentially it's 5 months of the year that we don't have leaves. So we can't only think of what looks good when the leaves are out. And this is one of those plants that fills that need, you know, of winter interest, a year-round quality.
People don't think of as deciduous plants, plants that lose their leaves, as interesting in the winter. But very often the shape is beautiful or the bark is beautiful.
You know, it may sound crazy, but actually I'm particularly fond of this tree's architecture. I actually like the winter landscape.
Because you can really see how trees and shrubs are made.
Exactly. And this is one of those plants, really, that is just outstanding.
Now, what are we standing in the middle of?
Well, right now, this is yellow root, Xanthorrhiza simplicissima, which again is another one of our natives.
Yeah.
Though as you can see, it's not really an ornamental plant.
Yeah. It's a low, shrubby ground cover for sun, isn't it?
Yeah, it does well in sun, and actually will tolerate quite dry sites.
Yeah. Now, is that a flower I'm looking at?
That is full bloom.
Full bloom.
Full bloom.
Very subtle. You have to look close.
You do.
But for the right spot, this would be a good
Exactly.
plant.
You know, it just fills in this entire area here.
Yeah, and low maintenance.
No maintenance.
Tell me some more things I can grow for winter.
Well, why don't we take a walk over here and take a look at the red twig dogwood?
Oh, that sounds great. So, David, this is how big a red twig dogwood will eventually get.
It will get this large if you don't prune it. The real attraction for the red twig dogwood is, of course, this red coloration along the stem. But if you look further down into the plant, you'll see it's only true on the youngest growth.
Yeah, it's not red in there at all.
No, it's not. So in order to continue the plant growing with the red twigs, you need to cut about a quarter of the twigs out each year. And when I say to cut them out, I mean to actually cut them at the base of the plant and remove them.
And we prune it to keep the red always renewed.
Exactly. And you know, here in New England, as we were saying, because 5 months a year we don't have leaves, we're looking for color in the garden when there aren't leaves. And so this is one of those plants that provides that.
And that red against the snow would be quite attractive.
It's wonderful. And actually there's a cultivar of this particular species called Flavoramia, which is green. Almost kind of a chartreuse green.
Well, that would be pretty against the snow, too, wouldn't it?
It is, and also works quite well with the red twigs.
And you treat it the same way with the
You do. Every year, cut about a quarter of the stems out.
The flowers are pretty, too, perched up on top of the twigs, the way dogwood grows. Not the kind of dogwood flower people are used to on the flowering tree, but attractive.
It is, yeah, it is attractive.
Now, we've been looking at a lot of very large shrubs that you really couldn't plant right up next to a house. Can you show me some that somebody might put, say, under a window?
Sure, why don't we take a walk down this way and take a look. So this is Rosa Carolina, one of our native roses. As you see, it doesn't get too high.
Right.
It has a real informal, loose growth habit. And around late June, it puts out a bunch of pinkish white flowers.
Are there nice hips after that?
There are, and they persist into winter if the birds haven't gotten them.
Well, that's a nice reason to grow it, too. And you can easily keep this under control under a window.
Exactly. You know, you can just, it lends itself to easy pruning. You don't have to cut it back to the ground. You can just cut it to the height that you like.
Great.
And you know, Barbara, if you're looking for something even lower than the rose, you could plant potentilla.
It looks wonderful right here in front of the shrub border, but I can see growing this under a window if it's as tall as it gets.
Right, that would be a perfect choice. You don't have to worry about it, you don't have to worry about battling it.
Yeah. It has great gray-green foliage. I love that.
And it's got really nice yellow flowers that come on in the end of May. And there's, you know, for about 2 or 3 weeks you have this burst of color, but then as the season wears on, you just kind of fade out. Really wonderful plant.
That's great. Now, an awful lot of people still want evergreens, though, around their house, and most of them get far too big. Do you have any suggestions there?
Yeah, we have a bunch of dwarf evergreens. Why don't we go take a look at those?
Wonderful.
You know, Barbara, there are a number of dwarf evergreens that are suitable for planting in front of the house. For example, here we have a dwarf Norway spruce. Normally, the Norway spruce get about 100, 150 feet.
Right.
But this particular cultivar is low-growing and stays compact.
Well, how old is this plant?
This one here is 35 years old.
Oh, my goodness. And that would be fine under a window.
Exactly. You wouldn't have to worry about having to prune it back.
They make a great tapestry of different colors and textures together. This is a hemlock, but it certainly isn't growing the way a hemlock usually grows.
No, usually you think of a hemlock again as another 100-foot tall evergreen tree, but this is one of the dwarf...
it's a weeping
shrub. It's a dwarf.
Really?
It is. And it's got this wonderful growth habit. Again, it doesn't grow too high. It's a wonderful plant for a small area.
And maybe that's the thing to look for, the ones that are growing out instead of up.
Yeah, you know, because a lot of people, they buy dwarf evergreens, and they think they're going to stay dwarf their whole life, but in fact, a dwarf evergreen really is an evergreen that grows very slowly.
I see.
For example, this dwarf Alberta spruce here, probably when planted, was about this tall.
A little fuzzy cone.
Like you see in the nursery.
And people buy them all the time, and they'll put them even in little planters and expect them to stay that way.
But as you can see, that's not where they end up.
No.
This plant here is 30 years old and probably would have outgrown the site that most people would have planted them in.
Right. So it might be fine in the right spot.
Exactly.
You just have to remember that your dwarfs may eventually get to be 3 times the size of Snow White if you're not careful. David, this has been a wonderful tour. I've learned a lot today.
Well, thanks a lot for coming out and seeing us. I hope you come back again sometime.
Oh, there's so much more to see. I'm sure I will. We're about to plant an American cranberry bush. It's a type of viburnum. But first we want to figure out where it should go. I think it should go in this bed that we've made, Elliot. It'll look great. But we're a little bit concerned about this spruce tree here because it's got some roots coming out, and we want to plant it where we don't get root interference.
Well, if I were to make a judgment, I would look back at the roots of the tree and see one going that way and one going this way and assume there may be a better place to dig here than elsewhere, but there's no guarantee on that.
I have to take two measurements. One is the depth. That looks to be about 8.5 inches. Let's check the other side, though.
It's a little deeper over here.
It's deeper than that.
About 10 inches
10
on
inches.
this side.
So we're going to want about a 9 or 10 inch deep hole. The other measurement is how far across it is. You hold it there. Looks to be about, you got it there, 20 inches.
Yeah, that's what I'd
Okay,
say.
let's put about a foot on either side. So that'll make it, 20 is 32. Now, a lot of these roots we can handle by just going like that. And get them right out. But we're hitting a big one here, Elliot. I guess we'll need the root axe.
Well, before we do that, we have some that are smaller than we need the root axe, and if I use a pair of loppers judiciously, I can take them out. Now, there's one more root here, but since it's only on the edge of the hole, I think we'll just sort of inch the bush over and leave it, because that's the type of root I would hate to take off this tree.
I think we're about there, Elliot.
Looks good to me.
Let's measure it. I'm going to put a stick across here. You could use a tool, but just make sure it's absolutely flat. And measure from the center down to the bottom. Well, it looks a little like 10 inches plus. I actually like to dig holes a little deeper than I need them, because many times in the past, I've been all alone planting a shrub bigger than this. Once I got it into the hole, there was no way I was ever going to get it out again. So what I would do is put some sod clumps in the bottom and then gently lower my shrub into the hole. And if it's too high, I can always pull out a sod clump from underneath it. And the sod clump will only do the shrub good down there because it's full of organic nutrients.
We're ready to put it in?
We're ready to put it in.
All right. There. Now
Another rock, or are you okay?
No, then you stand out there and look at it and tell me if that...
Now, I think we ought just to do a quick check on the level there. There. Now, what we're seeing is that it is now exactly the depth it was planted when it was dug in the nursery. And we're not going to have to put soil up higher than where the stems start, which would be bad for the shrub. You notice that we are not taking off any burlap from this. It's very important not to do that. I'm going to cut off a couple of these straggly white nylon cords just so they don't poke up and look ugly. But only after I've gotten the shrub in place, because you don't want to touch that and cause it to come undone. Okay, I think we're ready to fill, Elliot.
Okay, now we only want to fill halfway at first.
Right. That should do it. At this point, I'm going to put some water in the hole, and this will also help to fill up any cavities that are in there, as well as give the ball a good soaking.
You know, this looks very stable to me, Barbara. Why would it have been a problem to take off the burlap?
It could have caused the root ball to fall apart, and this has so little root system as it is, having been dug, that it really could injure the plant and even kill it. That's why. So better to be safe.
Because that root system is supporting the whole top that it came with. All right, we're ready to fill it in then?
Yep, let's do it. Got a little stomp, and we've got it. Now we've got one more step here. There's some extra soil around here because we've taken out enough to make room for that ball. And we're going to make a little softer around this plant that will hold water when it rains or when we water it. In days past, I learned to put a lot of organic matter and nutrients into the planting hole when I put a shrub in. The current wisdom now, though, is to enrich the entire planting area to encourage the roots to go out into the world around it. So what I might do if this were not prime soil is scatter some good compost and then till it lightly into the top couple of inches of the soil. Not too deep, because we're being careful of the tree roots here. Okay, I guess our last job is to water.
Well, no, my last job is to pick it up and put away all the tools.
Okay, I'll do the watering. You pick it up.
Boy, Barbara, you can tell these viburnums are suited for growing here. They look spectacular. Are they going to get as tall as the lattice divider?
Yes, they will. This is arrowwood, which is a Native American viburnum, and it bears these white, flat-topped clusters of flowers that are just coming into bloom right now. They're going to be a perfect screen between this sitting area and this driveway, just like we planned.
Oh, and in front of the rose border, this is looking good, too, isn't it?
Yes, we are trying out some shrubby ground covers here. This is bearberry, which is going to bear little red berries. See, it's starting to already, Elliot, and creep along through here, as will this wintergreen, which also has red berries on it later on.
I think we ought to plant some more of these.
Well, that's a good idea. Let's get to it.
All right. And so for now, goodbye and good gardening.
Next on TLC, get started on easy home projects that anyone can handle here on Homebodies. Then indulge your creative side with Debbie Stapley on Crafts & Company here on TLC.